Hello, I'm Crickets, and welcome back to I Have a Story. Today I'm going to take another break from the emotional stuff I've been talking about and talk about something else that's emotional again on a different level. I'm going to ask people, please like, subscribe, share, help me get my voice heard and my knowledge shared. There are things about the 9/11 incident that is not being talked about today, and all of a sudden now 9/11's hitting the news lines, headlines again, and a lot of people are talking about 9/11 again. But there are things that are not being talked about that there should be absolute evidence of, absolute proof that we should have the ability to absolutely prove whether these things happened or not. Back in the mid 2000s, an independent researcher went out and made a video in a documentary about what they uncovered about 9/11. I would really like that video to resurface again. Now, this is going to sound, some of it, a little bit absurd to some people. But again, follow along in some of the things I have to talk about with what they reported in that. There's evidence. There has to be. So either one side of the story is right or wrong, and I don't know which. But again, these are things that are undeniably provable that really, undoubtedly, should tell us what happened more about 9/11. But nobody's talking about this stuff today. We're talking about a lot of the simple things like look at the way the explosions took place. Okay, that was in that video. But there's a lot that was in that other video that nobody's reporting about. Nobody, not even the architectures that are up in Alaska who did the research on the buildings falling and came up with the what they presented over all of that with their ideas and thoughts. So let's move on. One of the things that's not really being talked about, I've heard a couple people talk about this today, but the Pentagon, the plane that hit the Pentagon, again, the wingspan of the plane would have taken out the telephone poles, but all the telephone poles were still standing. We just unfortunately had another plane crash, yesterday or the day before of me making this video. They talked about how every car down the line of the road was on fire because of the plane wingspan spread across the whole road and hit every car. Think how low a car is compared to a telephone pole, but the telephone poles were still standing. The hole in the side of the Pentagon was just a circle. Again, where'd the wings on the plane go? So those are some questionable things. Sorry, I got this. Oh, hey, I actually do have a tick on me. I thought I was just feeling something. I get the feeling of bugs crawling all over my skin, and wow, that was actually a tick. Welcome to the wilderness, people. Don't bother me none. So back to the story. That seems awfully strange. But let's move on to some other things that they talked about that I can remember them talking about in that video that they made all the way back, like I said, mid-2000s, just a few years after 9/11 happened. There was a documentary made, not the one by the firefighters, but an independent went out and made and did the research, and this is what they brought forward. So we had the plane that crashed in the Pentagon that seems strange. One thing they brought up and nobody's talked about is there's a tremor station right just a few miles from the World Trade Centers. And the tremor station reports showed what appeared to be detonations. It did not follow earthquakes. It did not follow most natural phenomena that takes place that they record out of that station. So they could feel the tremors, and if you pull that report according to what they showed in that video, again, I don't know what's all true and what's not, especially in today's world, just it's a mixed chaos of insanity. But that should be a very good point to talk about. I mean, we keep talking about there were explosions. No, there were no explosions. We'll pull that tremor report. The tremor report will show the explosions or not. Another thing that does not get talked about today, I remember them reporting that the owners of the World Trade Centers, just days or weeks before the 9/11 event took place, raised their insurance policies. That should be completely documented and provable, and that would show coercion. They knew it was going to happen? I mean, really, if they raised, I mean, that should be all documented. If they raised their rates on their insurance so that they would get paid more when those buildings came down, that would show that they knew it was going to happen. Some other things that were reported. It was reported, and there were interviews back then, that the maintenance workers at the World Trade Centers were the government agency came in, according to the interviews that took place then. They came out and said, yes, they told us to go home for a day. When we came back to work the next day or 2 days later, I don't remember which one it was a day or two later, when we came back to work, everything was painted. We didn't paint it. They sent us home. They painted the inside of the structure, and then we come back, fresh paint. Don't know if that's true or not, but again, there's got to be witnesses. There's got to be proof. I mean, there's got to be documents that we came in and told these people to go home. People had to have punched in and out. There's witnesses. That does not get talked about. I remember them showing video of, look, here's the fire department with pictures and reporting we found the black boxes. But yet, our final investigative report said no black boxes were ever found, but yet there's proof that there is, and the fire department did come out and make claims that we found them. We have pictures of our firefighters holding them. Why isn't that being talked about anymore? Something that should be undeniably provable that nobody is talking about. The plane that crashed supposedly in Pennsylvania, according to what was reported and documented then, and they showed evidence of it all, that one, they talked to professionals who were on scene in Pennsylvania, and they said there's nothing here to resemble a plane. We don't see any parts of a plane here. There was also reports that that plane that supposedly crashed in Pennsylvania actually landed at Cleveland Airport. And they had a full documentary about interviewing the people with log reports, people with proof that no, we didn't crash, we're still alive, we're in Cleveland. And they put us, and there was a whole, I remember the documentary of the, the plane landed, and they made us all go into a aircraft hangar and brief the passengers in an aircraft hangar. Again, if that's true, I mean, people got to still be alive, right? There still has to be Social Security numbers, still collecting benefits of our country, paying taxes, receiving taxes, all of that kind of stuff, to prove that those people are still alive, or was that all a hoax? These are things that nobody talks about today, but there's got to be absolute evidence of these things. Another thing that nobody talks about. Supposedly there was millions of dollars in gold in the basement of the World Trade Center. Millions of dollars of gold. So even though that building came down and it all melted, there should be a giant lump of gold in the bottom of it, right? Where'd all that gold go? I could understand paper dollars burning up, but gold doesn't burn up, it melts, and then it re-solidifies, and we have a giant lump of gold. There should have been a giant lump of gold in the bottom of the trade centers, but we just immediately packed it up and shipped it to China? What is our country's deal with China? We just give them and give them and give them. And we gave them the World Trade Centers. Wow. So these are some things that I remember being reported back in that report that nobody talks about today, and there should be absolute evidence of those things. And I will say what's kind of funny, I mean, not saying funny, it's really crazy, and I don't know what to believe again with any of it. All I can say is what I saw in front of me and not know what to believe with all of it. I had that video twice. Once I had it in the late 2000s, and my computer, this has only ever happened twice in my entire life. I've had computers crash plenty of times. I've never had one go up and smoke, literally start smoking and burn up, except for after watching that video. And then in 2010, I was able to obtain another copy of it. I put it on my computer, and that computer went up in smoke after watching it. That's the only 2 times that ever happened to me. And other people were reporting the same thing after watching that same documentary. There was a big hoopla about that. So I don't even know if that video even still exists out there, but it's got to somewhere. Somebody has to have a copy of that from back in the day. I think we ought to find that and look at the research that was done there and see if the evidence and what was said. I mean, back in the 2000s, we didn't have the ability for individuals to just be able to falsify and create video and edit video like we do today. Not saying it wasn't possible. I mean, we've had movies for decades, but it wasn't so easy for individual people to be able to create that. And who this guy was that reported that, I'd never heard of him before, and I'd never heard of him after. All I saw was that one documentary that he created, and it was a real eye-opener. Maybe he's not even around anymore. But these are questions that should have evidence to validate them. And especially stuff like the tremor report. Why is nobody talking about the tremor report? That shows the vibrations, and they weren't good vibrations that we were feeling at all. But we should still have a documented report of that. But I don't hear anybody talking about these things. So these are some things I wanted to share with you that, again, there should be evidence. We should be able to prove this. And these are things that nobody's talking about. So I thought I'd share them with you. Again, I lived it. I was there. I saw it. Got a lot more of those stories coming. And here's a link to a few that I already have.